was 23 years old. I was the vice president of City Kids Foundation. I was 25 when I did Cool Runnings and 26 when I got New York Undercover. But I started in community work as a 16-year-old, right, in Harlem, teaching in a place called Upper Front After School Program. So I was already tutoring kids. By 20, I was working in 13 high schools around New York. In fact, in this building is a high school, right, the Brooklyn Steam Center, where we ran our real estate development curriculum, first time ever in the history of New York, in this building.
Oh, we need a horn for that.
Students in this building, right?
Yeah.
So that work has never stopped.
Yeah.
And so for me, knowing that, how many men would come up to me and say, hey, man, that relationship you have with your son on the show, that made me want to be a better father. Or kids that would say,
we didn't even talk about that aspect. Yo, the relationship you had as a dad was crazy.
Kids would say to me, I make my father watch the show, and I ask my father, Dad, how come you can't be more like that? And I didn't have kids at the time, right? But I was basing the character on my brother, who was a teenage father, which my character would have been, right?
Right.
And then my own father. So those kinds of things, knowing that the representation of Black masculinity was important, right? There were little things that I would do. You talk about impact. So like if I had scenes with my son, I would always use the best diction, and I would speak clearly. Like it wasn't like how I would be as the cop in the street. But that was very deliberate, right? So as an actor, that's a choice, right? Because for me, it was communicating. One, for me, how many times, especially back in the day, when they would stick a microphone, the camera in front of an athlete's face, how many athletes couldn't articulate themselves well, right? And that would always bother me.
Well, there was not a lot of media training at that time either. I'm just saying that goes a long way.
It's not just the media training, but it's like we learning to speak the English language.
Right.
And I'm just saying, my mother and my father, they're blah, blah, blah.
Like these children.
Right. But so the beautiful thing about theater,
the
beautiful thing about theater is you learn about diction. You learn about enunciation. You learn about the importance of hitting your T's and your S's and your R's, your consonants. So those things translate, right? In terms of when you're telling a story, I want to represent us, right, at a street level, but I also want to represent those that might have a little bit more elevated experience. So for me, those things are really, really important, right? If they love
it on YouTube, they go crazy. They love it on
YouTube. If my character is, if the script says JC prepares a TV dinner for G, I'm like, nah, props, go get real food. We're gonna cook in the scene. So there were things like that that you knew you could do that were communicating a message, or even something simple as like, I drop him off at school, yo, give me a kiss. It might not have been scripted, but I knew it was important to show affection between a father and a son. So for me, it was honestly, it was an extension of my community work. So that's really how I looked at it. It wasn't about, oh, this is now the opportunity to start to be a movie star. That was the last, honestly, it was the last thing I was even fucking thinking about. It was really about, how do I do music? Because I'm a musician, right? We got music every week, but Dick Wolf wouldn't let us do music. Myself, Luna, and Michael are all musicians. Even Patty Darbyville, but the producers wouldn't let us do that. How do we use this show to engage community in a more meaningful way? How do I use this money to open up my restaurant, Soul Cafe that I opened? How do I do it to start my record label? How do I do it? So I was interested in like all of this other entrepreneurial community shit more than how am I going to become the next Denzel, right? That was never, and still to this day, that's never been the ambition. It's been, you're gifted, right? You guys do your research about my music. It's on YouTube. You can Google my name and look up Malik Yoba singer, right? But you'll see some stuff. But I had a record deal at 24 years old with Columbia, right? I was pushing the music because the music for me was independence, right? I didn't have to wait on somebody to do music. I could pull up, do open mics around the city, which I did. So I was much more thinking about entrepreneurship and community than I was about the ascending as an actor, even though that was part of it, but it wasn't the focus. And in retrospect, I probably could have done more of that. Like I remember meeting with Amy Pascal, who was the head of Columbia Pictures. And at the time, you know, you're the new kid on the block. Everybody wants to have a meeting with you. Studio heads, network heads. Like, so tell me, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know, I'm about to open this restaurant. I want to do this record. I want to do. I'm mentioning everything, but please introduce me to, you know, Cameron Crowe or fucking, you know, Quentin Tarantino or Michael Bay or Michael Mann or
you were talking
Oliver
about your
Stone.
aspirations instead of focusing on networking. Yeah. But again, you live and you learn at that point in time. That's what you wanted.
But that's authentically who I am.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So even what we weren't able to do with this tour back in the day. So using New York on the cover, I had this idea called the Protect and Serve Tour.
Okay.
Right. And the idea was, how do we partner with community-based organizations that are doing crime prevention, public safety stuff, but use artists that performed on the show to anchor these concerts and then do the community piece? Well, wasn't able to do it 30 years ago, but we're doing it now.